recently, I think it was actually yesterday, which was a Thursday, President Tony Frank put out this large email talking about this group that was putting up anti-immigration posters. So that started a bunch of controversy, right? And then now today there's this talker named Charlie Kirk, right-wing guy. He's talking about something against socialism. And we here have a bunch of people protesting against this event. There are a lot of cops, K9 units. There's some dudes on the roof over there, and got some people in riot gear and stuff. And we're just here to record what's going on and probably interview some people, and that's about it. What brings you around here?
I'm just here to show that what these people are doing is wrong and that we're not going to stand for it.
Which people?
The people who are hateful against people of different races, different sexualities, different orientations. They just hate without really understanding who we are, and they put us in a box without really getting to know us.
Oh, yeah? What makes them hateful? Is it like what they do? Can you give me any examples?
I guess it's just they think that they are superior than us, and so they think that anyone who is not like them is inferior. And I just think that's not okay, because I think we are powerful in diversity, and I just think that's just something that they are not really understanding.
I'm assuming you're here just because Charlie Kirk is talking, or is there anything more? Or
I guess I'm not necessarily protesting that he's here, but just being here to show support to the people, to people who feel marginalized, to people that feel like they are not being heard.
All right. Well, okay. Last thing. So, as you can see, I'm also a minority too, right? And I've never personally experienced any sort of racial hate or anything that's racist. So I don't really understand if there's actually a hate out there. I always hear about it. I've never experienced firsthand. I don't know if you've experienced it. You can maybe tell me more about it.
Yeah, so I feel like now the hate is not so much externalized, but more internalized. So the hate still exists, but we don't see it as much. I feel like after this election, we've seen more of that external hate showing. And I just guess it's not on the individual level, but also on a cultural and an institutional level, that there are those barriers that block us from, block certain people from just getting up the social ladder.
So what brings you here? So this is a pretty big gathering, so I would like to know what really brings you here.
Well, I came tonight because I felt as though having people come in from an exterior source to tell us what we think and the way we should be in Fort Collins was objectionable to me.
That would be the same for me.
So I'm assuming you both are in support of free thought then, right? So freedom of thought, because you don't want people like Charlie Kirk making people think a certain way. Am I correct?
No, I think that people, Charlie Kirk can say what he wants to say, and people can think what they want to think. I came here tonight because it's also my privilege to come and say what I think, and people can agree with me or not. And that's a public discourse that we need to continue to have. So I don't mind that he's here. I do mind that the TWP sent in people to, in some way, cause a scene or in any way to be disruptive. He can say his piece, and we'll say ours. So that's kind of where I am.
In our next interview, we talked to this guy who was wearing a very controversial shirt. You'll see what it says. But it was kind of interesting because he was talking about the topic of we don't want Charlie Kirk because he causes unrest and all the groups that he brings, and how it's not a good idea for the community because everything gets destroyed and stuff, and how he wants to keep it an even polite discourse with orderliness. And then you look at the shirt he's wearing and you're like, what the heck? You really think that that's going to be politeness? You'll see what I'm talking about.
Hello. Thank you for talking with us. How's your day been going, by the way?
All right, perfect.
So there's a big gathering going on here. So what brings you here?
I'm a resident of Fort Collins, and this is not what our town wants. This Charlie Kirk guy is shame on the university for bringing this guy into Fort Collins and making it seem like the people of this town have that kind of view.
What makes Charlie Kirk so repulsive to you?
Just his the anti-homosexual stance he has on, on minorities, and it's just he's Nazi, and it's a disgrace upon this university, and what happens at this university reflects upon the town that surrounds it. So, and residents like myself are just tired of this university making us look like a bunch of racist, fascist bigots.
Did you go to this school at all?
No, I've lived in Fort Collins for over 20 years.
Okay, all right.
If you guys want to have these kind of events, just make sure they stay peaceful. We called, we emailed, and by the hundreds, voicing our objections to this guy speaking here. It's not that we don't want to quash his right to free speech. We want the students to be able to have events like this, but this guy tends to draw groups like Antifa and the Traditional Workers' Party, and it's been proven that when these two groups get together, there's always a potential of violence. The fact that we have to have the National Lawyers Guild here says that there's a potential for violence and property destruction.
There's a surprisingly large amount of actually people who support folks like Charlie Kirk.
No, I'm not saying that's
I'm sure there's a lot of people who would actually want some representation of their ideology on their campus. And that's the beauty of a university, is that there's a diversity of ideas on both sides, even if it's one that may seem debatable or controversial. So that's probably the main reason why Charlie Kirk is here in the first place. And even though people think he's a white supremacist or a Nazi, he's there and he's expressing some ideas that a lot of people don't have much of a voice on, because a lot of the universities focus more towards left-wing ideologies.
You students are here for 4 years, maybe 6 at the most, and then you go on to wherever you're going. You go on to whatever career you're doing. You don't stay in Fort Collins. If you've lived in Fort Collins for 20 years like I have and watched the amount of nonsense that's come out of this university that's affected our town and its residents, people who have nothing to do with CSU, who have lived here for generations, you might understand why we feel the way that we do. It's all we're asking is the fact that you guys are here for 4 years. Respect the fact that there is a town around this campus where people live, call this place home, and we would like to have our views respected too on what happens on this campus, because like I said, when it goes south, it's not the students of CSU who pay the price. It's not the university who pays the price. It's the residents in the surrounding neighborhood and the taxpayers of Fort Collins who have to pay to clean up the mess. We're the victims. We're the ones who have our property vandalized, our cars smashed, our homes wrecked, and our safety threatened, regardless of whether it's a sports victory or a political issue. That's all we're asking, is that, the people in the surrounding neighborhoods have a voice when something like this happens, because we don't want to kill anybody's right to free speech. We want you students to be able to have events like this, like I said, but we don't want the nonsense spilling out into our neighborhoods.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Trump smokes me! Trump smokes me! Trump smokes me!
This gathering's out here. I'm assuming it's all mostly because this Charlie Kirk guy, he's speaking. He's talking about, he's anti-socialism, and he's going to talk about how socialism is bad. What are your thoughts on just socialism in general, whether or not it's good or bad, or why?
Oh, man. Socialism in general, it's not something that I know tons about. It's more I'm here for the solidarity. I think that socialism in a certain regard is a way that we could go.
A lot of people, they're in support of socialism because they believe that capitalism's a bad thing, all right? And some reasons could be because the corporations are taking advantage of the people or they're hurting the environment. So do you think capitalism is bad? If so, why?
I don't think capitalism is bad. I think the way that we've turned capitalism into is bad, yes.
A lot of people, they're in support of socialism because they believe that capitalism's a bad thing, all right? And some reasons could be because the corporations are taking advantage of the people or they're hurting the environment. So do you think capitalism is bad? If so, why?
I don't think capitalism is bad. I think the way that we've turned capitalism into is bad, yes.
So what do you think has happened? What makes today's capitalism bad?
I think the top 1% owning all of the money.
So the top 1%, that's a term I've heard before. It's funny. I remember a lot of like Hollywood actors. They talk about the 1% too, all about the social. They tend to hold a bunch of left-wing views. And the funny thing it's really funny because a lot of them are actually like really rich. Like, what are your thoughts on it? It almost seems hypocritical to me.
Of these famous people having a lot of money and not believing in capitalism? I mean, I think that's hard. I don't think a lot of our actors are in the top 1%. I think that's more corporation owners, Amazon, things like that.
Capitalism might actually be helpful because of how much it actually provided to the people, even though there's some people that are up on the rich, but the people who buy their products, they're also benefiting too.
You think if we got rid of capitalism, we would lose all of our phones right now?
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen. I think that's not what would happen. You think if we got rid of capitalism, we would lose all of our phones right now?
Yeah.
I don't think that would happen. I think that's not what would happen.
All right. Well, thank you very much for interviewing.
You should ask that guy some questions.
That guy?
Yep.
All right. If he wants to. Do you want to be interviewed?
Sure.
So, okay. I asked her earlier about what are your thoughts on socialism? Good, bad, why?
I think it's great. I think that right now we have a distribution of wealth going towards the top. I think it was 82% of new wealth last year went to the top 1%, or 10%, something like that. So I think that we need to implement things in our society to make sure that wealth gets distributed all around.
So then what are your opinions on capitalism then?
I think that in a perfect world, regulated capitalism could possibly work, but I think what we're seeing right now in the late stages of capitalism, it's failing really badly. People aren't getting resources, people aren't getting health care. I just think that capitalism, people say socialism looks good on paper, but then it doesn't work. But I think what we're seeing around the world right now is capitalism isn't working.
So another person that we interviewed was this Jewish guy. I am 1/4 Jew, so I approve of Jews. And he was basically there to spread awareness about Holocaust Awareness Week, which is coming up pretty darn soon. And he kind of had a view on the whole topic and stuff, but he wasn't really pro any position or against any position. He hates Nazis, but that's about it. And there weren't really any Nazis there, so.
So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So what drives you to here in this event?
I figured if I was going to show up, I'd be handing out handbills for Holocaust Awareness Week, which will be happening the third week of February. I don't have any more handbills, otherwise I'd give you some. But the 21st, we're going to have a speaker at the LSC share her experiences. I figured if I was going to show up, I might make some use out of it and get some support for Holocaust awareness.
So there's a lot of stuff going on out there, a lot of signs talking a lot about Nazis. Do you think that Charlie Kirk is a Nazi?
I don't know too much about Charlie Kirk. I did see members of the TWP around earlier today, around 10 a.m. They were just sort of wearing red shirts underneath jackets and whatnot, just meandering, enjoying the beautiful day to hate. But I don't think Charlie Kirk's a Nazi. I just think that he attracts Nazis, and I don't think they've done a good enough job of turning them away.
You're saying that there are Nazis out there. Can you give me examples of what kind of people would be Nazis?
I've been heckled on the street. I wear a yarmulke, and I'm a proud Jew, and I've had anti-Semitic slurs thrown at me out car windows. And I mean, I definitely believe they're out there. I've experienced it. I don't think they're here tonight because they're scared.
The next group of people that we interviewed were actually the very small group of conservatives that we found there. We could identify them by their Make America Great Again hats. And compared to all the liberals who were there, it was a very small percentage. I would say there were only 14 of us out of the 400 that were there. And when I first met them, I actually thought that they were like neo-Nazis or whatever, because I don't know, just the aura they gave off. They didn't seem that friendly. But I guess it was because when I tried to interview them, they didn't trust me, because Vice News was right next to them, and All their reporters were there, and you know, Vice News, they're not good news. They're bad news folks. And so basically these Trump supporters just wanted to verify that who we said we were was actually true. And in the end, they did consent to be interviewed, so we'll see what that was.
You're here obviously because there's an event going on back there, lots of protests against Charlie Kirk and other Trump-related things. I guess it's safe to say that you hold an unpopular stance in this political turmoil. So what brings you around here?
We just came out to kind of show support for Turning Point U.S.A. and kind of check out what's going on in these liberal shitholes.
A lot of people, they seem to confuse Turning Point USA as white supremacist Nazis. What do you have to say to protect your stance that they aren't?
I would say basically anybody to the right of freaking Stalin is a Nazi. So, I mean, we're just having a good old-fashioned Nazi meetup here, I guess.
Yeah, don't you think the Nazi description is a bit over-exaggerated?
Completely. It's completely over-exaggerated at this point where the word has no value at this point. We're just living in an age of sensationalism and hyperbole. I mean, even on both sides. So, and see, now the Nazi chants are coming.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's safe to say that you support Donald Trump, right? So what do you think he's done that has gotten to your liking?
It's funny that you ask that. I actually voted Johnson, but after seeing what Trump did, I kind of came around the corner. The big ones are slashing through regulations, the tax plan, and the election of Neil Gorsuch.
One thing that really stuck out to me about Donald Trump is compared to other politicians, he has a very strong will. And that's something that I find really important because it seems like he's like a strong leader. And what do you think the same way? Do you think that he's a strong leader?
The man is emanating with power and dominance. I really like it. I'm glad that we have a shit poster in chief who, I mean, not just speaks his mind, but I mean, kind of leads the way with it.
What are your thoughts on the media? Do you think the media will eventually flip right?
I don't foresee them ever flipping right. I mean, I honestly think that they're still virulently anti-Trump, especially with this giant nothing burger for the investigations going on. I mean, they still hate him. They still absolutely hate him, and I don't think they're ever going to support him, and they're not ever going to support any kind of conservative ideas either.
Vice News was also there. They came in with their Sony FS7s, like cinema cameras. They pretended to be like independent, like news people, or just like a small group, kind of like what I am. But they weren't. They were tricking people because they didn't have any Vice memorabilia on them or anything. And they were like, that's kind of like, it's falsifying, you know? So basically, a lot of people wanted to verify who I actually was, like my YouTube channel, because you couldn't trust anyone. And what's her name? One of the reporters was there. Her name is... Her name's Ella Reeve, and she was there, and we like pointed them out and stuff, and they ignored us.
And this is Vice News.
I look at him, especially compared to the other politicians out there, he seems to be a very strong leader, and that's something that appeals to me. First off, he's created more jobs.
Do you think he created more jobs than like Barack Obama did? Of course. So think about it.
Did you hear about the fall of 09?
8 years. How many years has Trump had?
Well, he's had a year.
All right, so he's had a year. Now, when Obama became president in 2008, what happened to the stock market?
I mean, you can't blame him.
I'm not blaming him. Let me finish, all right?
Hold
on one second. All right, so the stock market crashed, right? During Obama's presidency, the stock market only gained 3% growth. That's barely matching the inflation rate. Under Trump's first year, it went to a whopping 4%, man. Just 1 year. And then the Dow has broken undocumented records, such as 25,000, man. It has never reached 25,000.
Yeah, but hear me out. This is a rally against a system, not against a part of the system.
Yeah, I got roasted. I want to try again, redeem myself maybe. I don't know, but some guy was recording me not having good arguments is probably going to be on YouTube now. I'm gonna look like an idiot.
In conclusion, the only thing that happened from this whole event was a bunch of people went outside, we argued, no one got their point across, we still hold our own beliefs, even harder, and a bunch of people got to see a guy speak. I didn't even know what he spoke about. I didn't even see the event. I talked to one of the guys I know about it, and he didn't really tell me what he spoke about. I mean, there was a panel and people were asking questions, but that was it. So it ended where basically the Antifa started attacking, according to a certain source that I have. So anyway, that source told me that the Antifa started attacking, and the police were like, all right, everyone get out of there. This is an unlawful gathering, you must move. And there were lots of police everywhere, riot gear and stuff. So everyone moved out and ran. That was it. I'm like, that's the whole event for you. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and subscribe if you want to subscribe, which you want to subscribe because quality content. All right, thanks. Have a nice day.
Hello. Stay tuned.